Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Giovanni Luca Ciampaglia, and I'm assistant professor at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida. And I'm really delighted to be here with Meeyoung, our first keynote speaker for TTO 2020. Um, before we start with the Q&A, I've been asked to give a quick announcement. As you may have seen, our chat, Rocket Chat, has been experiencing some issues. If you're still having problems and you cannot see the chat, um, our technical staff is recommending to reload the whole page. That should fix the error. All right, so um, I wanted to introduce Mia because this is maybe she just spoke and introduced herself, but I think it's perhaps also a good idea to give some coordinates. Mia is currently chief investigator at the Institute for Basic Science in Daejeon, Korea, and an associate professor at the School of Computing at KAIST. Previously, she was a visiting professor at Facebook and has been in many excellent research centers around the world, including Max Planck Institute and so on. I won't mention about her interest because we already just all saw her talk, and I wanted to thank Mia for joining us today from her home in Korea at 10 p.m. in the evening of Friday night. Welcome, Mia.
Thank you so much.
All right, you're very welcome. Um, we're already receiving some questions from the chat. Uh, I want to start our Q&A with a question myself. In fact, I think that it's really interesting that you show us that at the beginning of your talk, you mentioned a lot of examples of rumors that have been spreading in Korea, around the world, in China, and so on. And many of these are a little bit nonsensical. In fact, they sometimes some are just funny to hear. Um, do you think that humor, in a sense, could be a good way, a strategy for debunking these rumors, for stopping their spread?
I think that's an excellent strategy. I mean, we certainly don't want to make rumors about some serious, misinformation that already had affected people and have caused death. For example, drinking alcohol that has caused death to hundreds of people in Iran, Vietnam, Mexico. We had seen some cases like that. So certainly you don't want to make a joke about these cases, but there have been numerous misinformation that are probably pretty harmless, like the one that I mentioned, like the fireworks can kill virus in the air, which is really funny. I've also heard a rumor that says eating 9 eggs a day before sunset will cure virus, which is also really funny. So I think we can use some jokes to get around this time and also debunk information which might be more sticky to people than regular fact checks.
Makes sense. Um, about this, so humor in a certain sense is also very context and culture dependent. And I noticed that I couldn't help notice that some of the rumors, for example, it would make sense to hear that, for example, some rumors were spread in a particular country. Um, I don't know. I think I remember some rumors about Italy too. That where I could see, okay, this makes sense that it would spread in Italy. Um, so it seems like understanding culture is also very important. Do you think that um, all these automated means, in a certain sense, or machine learning tools that a lot of people here are working on, should maybe try a little bit more to understand the cultural context where the message is spreading?
hmm Yep. I think interdisciplinary effort could be very helpful. because I want to point out two things. First of all, some rumors have spread really widely, but they are not necessarily very believed. So there are differences between exposure and to what extent people actually believe and find it, harmful. Many of the fact-checking organizations might just find it really difficult, and if some information is spreading widely, they might just go on and debunk that information, whether that's highly believable or not. And in some cultures, for example, in Asia, a lot of people are willing to take vaccines. We're going to be the first ones to line up to get the vaccines. So a lot of the vaccine rumor will just not work in many of the Asian countries. But in some countries, people just don't take vaccines. For example, in Germany, I saw people don't take flu shots regularly. So in these countries, there's some cultural aspect that people are not used to taking vaccines. Therefore, maybe vaccine-related rumors might have a stronger stand in such situation. We'll have to see how that played out actually. So there's definitely cultural aspects, but we also need to take into account how much believable, how much actual harm these things are doing. We have seen 5G rumors, and some people do believe in 5G rumors, but for most of the people, it was just like a joke, but it was debunked very widely. So I think debunking could have been focused more onto more rumors that had actual harm.
Makes sense. Okay, so let me now turn to some of the questions from the audience. One of our first question was about dissemination of the fact checks. I'll read it. It wasn't clear to me if any aspects of disseminating the fact checks were automated. If there was no automation involved, would it be possible to share some thoughts on the potential effectiveness and pitfalls of automating part of the process?
That's a great question. When we were launching our campaign, we try to resort to everything that we could reach out to. For example, we did targeted advertisement. We also relied on social media. We try to make beautiful infographic, and we try to make it really shareable so that it could be a single image that's readable in any kind of phone. It could have a small screen, large screen. It should be really visible. So we also made sure we send out the information in multiple languages, because if it's in English, maybe it only applies to a small fraction of the people in certain countries. So we wanted to translate it into the local language that would really resonate with people. So we tried various approaches to make it as viral as possible, because at the time, we had no other option but to just watch misinformation propagate, and that was something that we could just contribute in a little bit. But we were a group of scientists, but I think if social media and NGOs are going to, they've been doing an amazing job of disseminating fact checks, but I think a lot of the fact checks, they could also use something like a megaphone like feature at social media so that these information could be more easily accessible and so on. But if it's going to be really automated, and for example, if the moment someone writes, shares misinformation, if a fact check message would start popping up, that might be very direct, and that might be useful, but that may also cause some privacy concerns to some part of the population. So it's hard to say what would be the right balance to take, how invasive these kind of fact checking systems should work, how much automation should we expect to see.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. It does seem like a challenge, especially for platforms, to figure out the right balance in how they want to intervene and message, and how they want to let instead this process happen organically. Another question is, again, and I think this is again related to fact checking. You found that once people have been successfully exposed to rumor, checking is not very effective. In your experience, does this generalize beyond vaccines?
Okay. We have seen, we certainly know vaccine conspiracies are very important because it's not just affecting your willingness to vaccinate, but if some portion of the people are not going to be vaccinated, the herd immunity will not work. So it's not just affecting your decision, but it's also affecting the health of that particular community. So we were really interested in the perception of, vaccine acceptance or vaccine hesitancy in that sense. But I do think this could apply to non-vaccine rumors. We know about the confirmation bias and the disconfirmation bias. So if you start believing in something, you are less likely to welcome opposing opinions, and you're going to be more critical in processing the opposite opinion. So it's not going to be just about the vaccines, but I think probably the most drastic impact to society might just lie at the vaccine-related rumors, because it's directly affecting the future of health of the community.
Yes, that's quite true. I mean, in a certain sense, we're starting to get into this problem of also ethical issues. After all, prioritizing the intervention with against the possible harms for society. So this makes a lot of sense. Another question from the audience, I think this even received multiple likes. Were you able to look into the platform where most people got exposed to misinformation? For example, social media versus word of mouth.
We were only looking at social media, so it's hard to compare. But what is word of mouth these days? We are, this is the internet age. So I think the word of mouth these days are not going to be phone calls anymore. So probably word of mouth is really large portion of that would be, social media. If you also account for other, streaming platforms like, TikTok and YouTube as part of the social media, we might be able to distinguish which ones are more viral. But I think I can't say the stats for which one played a bigger role between these streaming platforms that automatically, recommend you content and possibly lead you to more radical content as you keep playing more content, versus active people, sharing or that's the information that comes through your links. It's really hard to know. I think both are taking roles in propagating these messages. But for me, it's hard to say which one had a bigger role. I think also both ones were also used for spreading fact checks as well. So we should also give credit for that. But I don't know if I answered whether that was the answer the person was looking for.
I think you got in there, and in fact I think like you rightly pointed out that this distinction sometimes is getting more and more artificial after all, right? Is all social science now computational social science in a certain sense? Probably most of it. So the question is more, does it even make sense to call it computational social science? Another question is about media literacy. And it says, did you consider media literacy as a factor in susceptibility to misinformation? It asks the degree to which individuals have been educated to treat information skeptically, check the sources, fact check, etc.
We didn't ask any question about media literacy, but in one of the demographic questions we had asked people about their age, their gender, their education, what was their highest degree of education they got. and also their financial status, and also their general perception of their own health. That's what we have asked. I don't remember in the back of my head whether we have seen more or less exposure or believability over these age or demographic features, but I remember what we see, rather than the demographic feature, it was the region that had the largest impact into how much misinformation you get, and also to what extent you believe that information is true. So depending on where you are residing, if you are in the Northern European countries, people were only believing on average 6% of the rumors they see. Still, 6% of people believe these 5G rumors and other things. But if you are from one of the African countries, you had about 30% of chance or 35% of the chance that you believe in these rumors that you see, which is pretty high. So the demographic features, rather than that, it was more like the cultural setting and the region. Maybe it's also your network, where you are, your surroundings, all these things that had a huge impact, rather than your position within the social network.
Makes sense. All right, I think they're signaling us that our time is over. This ends the session. Please again join me in thanking Mia for her insightful talk. And we now proceed to the next session of the talk.